Hey guys, Jake here. I want to talk today about upgrading your septic system. That's right, I said it right. We want to upgrade your septic system. What's wrong with the one you have now? Actually, a lot of things. This video, we're going to deep dive into how septic systems work and how we're going to make it better with SludgeHammer technology, an aerobic bacteria generator that really is going to upgrade that septic system to the next level. We're going to deep dive into bacteria, aerobics, anaerobics, facultative, and a lot of other really cool things to explain to you why this system is as awesome as it is and why you need it in your septic system. So what is this bacteria difference? Inside of our guts are different strands of bacteria. Now they're designed for a few things. Number one, they're designed to eat rather slowly. We don't need the bacteria that's inside of us eating faster than we do because we would run out of food. Number two, they need to be a specific temperature. We're 98.6 or so, and so that bacteria really likes a warmer environment. So just as soon as you use the restroom, that bacteria that's inside your gut, it goes through a culture shock because it's like, oh my gosh, this temperature is much cooler. And as it goes through the system, depending on the climate and the weather, it can get even cooler, and it really slows down a process that's already working really slow. The other factor is that the bacteria itself is rather oily. It needs to be able to move through your system, and so the film that it leaves is a very oily film, and that's not good for the environment. Both in an advanced treatment unit, and when that water comes out, it's a very slimy, oily film. Some people think that their system's not working the way it should be. It is. The bacteria is happy, but it's a slimy, oily, nasty kind of bacteria, as well as the prominent advanced in a conventional system, because that oil gets into the soil and won't let the water penetrate it and absorb into your fill bed or your absorption bed, whatever you have. So the difference between the standard conventional septic tank and treatment plant bacteria and the way it's been for hundreds of years is that man wasn't really designed to go to the bathroom and all of his waste go into basically a concrete or fiberglass box where it's isolated from the rest of nature. Man was designed to go into the woods and outhouses and places where other strands of bacteria are already present to be able to start working on that. What Sledgehammer has done and what this unit does is it takes very specific bacteria, facultative bacteria, ones that can switch between aerobic or anaerobic, from fermentation to just loving that oxygen and eating as it needs to. It was hand selected by a biologist, Dr. Dan Wickham, and what he was able to do was to find those perfect bacteria that really the septic needed to break down as fast as possible. And these 5 strands are in this SludgeHammer unit, and it's being added to it constantly. And so think of it like this. We'll look down here on the ground. You don't think about the fact that things are composting. They're breaking down constantly. You don't think about pine needles and leaves and other things falling onto the ground, but these things decompose for the next year's time, and they're doing it at a pretty rapid rate. Now, if you were to pack tons and tons and tons of these pine needles on top of themselves, these are interacting with the air, these on the bottom aren't, and it's that facultative, very natural bacteria that helps to make that system work. And this disappears over time, as well as we want your waste to disappear over time. What is human waste? Nothing but dead plants and animals that we've eaten. And the same that's breaking down in nature, these plants have to break down as well. Nature's been doing it now for thousands of years, so we don't have to worry about it. We're just bringing nature back into that septic environment with SludgeHammer bacteria, really giving you that upgrade that you're needing. So SludgeHammer's slogan is, nature called, we answered. That's an amazing slogan because it's so true. So much of nature is brought into this system. Literally, it was designed by a biologist, and he found the perfect system for a septic system. I want you to think of this column, this pipe, as a pump, because that's really what it is. It's doing multiple things, but first of all, it's a pump. This system sits on the bottom of your septic tank. So here we are at the very bottom concrete of your septic tank. When an air pipe comes over and is plumbed right here in the top, and all of this is full of water. Your tank operates completely full of water, and underneath this small screen are holes. That air is pumped beneath those holes, and the air makes its way up this column. Again, we're all underwater right now, and it displaces and moves this water out of this column. Well, what does that do? It makes water fill that void. So water comes in, water goes out. This is basically a pump that can pump up to 20,000 gallons of water per day. Now, it's not just a pump, because the oxygen itself is great for the bacteria. It's an aerobic system. It is designed to work with aerobic bacteria, and those air bubbles are feeding those bacteria with a very, very fine bubble. So you're really getting a good surface area interaction. On the inside of this is a growth membrane, meaning that bacteria that's interacting directly with the oxygen, as happy as it possibly can be, it's getting food on the bottom of a septic tank. That bacteria attaches. It's called attached growth. It literally attaches itself to as much surface area as it possibly can. Think of a sponge with all the pores and the holes and all of that. It's able to hold water. Same way in this, that it's got all these crevices, but it's able to hold the bacteria. And as that water is pumped through the system, you're literally forcing the interaction of that water inside of that septic system with this membrane 20 times a day. 20,000 gallons of water, 1,000-gallon septic tank in 1 to 24-hour period of time. This will interact both with the bacteria, with the oxygen, and get that mixing that we're looking for right here in this tank. Next time we're going to go, the next video we're going to look at is actually going to be inside of one of these septic systems. You're going to see this unit running and how much water it's really pumping and displacing, and just how clean that water is on a commercial facility. So here we are on site at a commercial facility where we have a SludgeHammer unit installed. Now, as you can see, this is kind of a large commercial place behind me. There's sometimes 35, upwards of 50 employees here, and they're only using the restroom. There's no showers in there. There's no washing machines in there. So the strength of the waste that's coming is rather high. Now, it doesn't have to deal with the extra water, but a constant amount of just flushing and the amount of paper and waste coming through a system like that actually makes it harder on a system, because it's only one type of waste. It's not getting that water, that lesser strength waste coming through to kind of dilute things. It's getting that full strength waste all the time. And so this unit, commercial system, 35 to 50 people sometimes using the restroom in there. This system should be struggling. A conventional septic system or even advanced treatment plant in this would be struggling to some degree on this. But this system's been installed over a little bit over a year now, not been pumped. It is just the way it was when we installed it, and I want to show you what that looks like. So as you can see here, the tank's installed. We got a little bit of washing because it's the winter time when it was installed, and we obviously will get that fixed up. But here's your incoming pipe. It's just marked there so that no one hits that clean out cap. Here's the main inlet. This here is our outlet with all of our filters before it goes out of this pipe. And actually there's a whole nother tank, settling tank over here, not needed, but it was there, so we used it. But I want to look inside this system and I want to show you what this SludgeHammer is doing. So that SludgeHammer unit is actually sitting slightly off center of this inlet pipe right here. And if you would just look at that action going on, that's water coming up that was on the bottom of the tank that's getting forced to the top of the tank. Now, something you might notice is how clean and clear that water is. In fact, the only paper I see is right there. Everything else in this system is completely clean. You can see a little bit of buildup on those pipes. That's actually the bacteria that's finding surfaces to build itself up on. So this facultative bacteria is going to grow, because it's an attached growth style bacteria. It's going to grow on everything it can. The sides of the tank, the bottom of the tank, any pipes coming in, out, any walls, any baffles, anything inside the tank, plus all of that surface area inside of that SludgeHammer. I tell you, this system is absolutely amazing. This is straight on the inlet side of this septic system, and it's getting constant amount of paper, and it's literally eating it all up. What is toilet paper? Nothing more than an old plant. It's a tree. It's a compost type material like that. It breaks up, and instead of it just floating on top and being there, it literally is getting eaten. It disappeared, broke down by this bacteria. The waste, paper, everything. And so this system will go a really long time without ever having to get pumped out. We will change the bacteria pack out every year. We'll check on this system, make sure everything's good, make sure the air pump is working, the filters are clean, and this system is okay. But this system won't need any big maintenance for a really long time. So here's the fun one. We're going to get into a little bit of the details about the different types of bacteria. Not the different strands, but the major categories for bacteria. There's thousands upon thousands, probably millions upon millions of different strands of bacteria. Number one, with air, aerobic. No air, anaerobic. So far so good and pretty easy. Then we've got one that's both, facultative. So if these were test tubes, we would wonder where the bacteria would culminate, where it would like to hang out at in these test tubes. So these are open to the air, so there's air up here to the atmosphere, test tubes. In an aerobic environment, you're going to find those bacteria right where they like to be. They like to be right at the top. Hence, this is the reason you see a lot of treatment plants use the mixing method, using that air that happens naturally when you put oxygen underneath, you put air underneath water, it makes it move. It moves it around in a inside the tank so that it can get this aerobic bacteria to the entire plant. The good thing is that this aerobic bacteria exists everywhere. Breathe it in, breathe it out, it's everywhere. That air pump literally pulling those bacteria out of the air and pushing air into the tank is literally causing this aerobic bacteria to interact with that water, not only giving it oxygen but also giving it the bacteria. No air, anaerobic. Where would this hang out at? Absolutely right here on the bottom. Why? Because up here where this air is poisonous for it. It literally cannot hang out there. Another good thing about it, how a septic tank works. So all the sludge, all the heavier than water solids sink to the bottom, where it can work on itself. So mixing a septic tank without air isn't good. It's not done either, because that's where all this breaks down at. The problem is that if this was a septic tank instead of a test tube, we have very light toilet papers and scum layers and greases and stuff like that. They hang out up here. Guess what bacteria action's happening up there? Almost none, because it's not getting pulsated like a treatment plant. There's no bacteria up there. It's anaerobic bacteria. Cool thing about facultative, and that's the way the SludgeHammer works. This bacteria is everywhere. Now, I will tell you there's a higher concentration would be at the top, because even though this facultative bacteria can be in both aerobic and anaerobic environments here, it likes the air better. It's going to produce better with more air. It's just not poisonous to it. It's not going to die if it doesn't. You take oxygen away from a treatment plant with aerobic bacteria, the bacteria dies. That's why the smell comes so fast. You add oxygen to an anaerobic, a conventional septic tank, what happens? All this anaerobic bacteria is going to die. It's going to smell horrible. Facultative bacteria, it loves it. It loves either one that you give it. And that's why it's such a strong bacteria. And the strands that have been used in this SludgeHammer are designed for a fast composition. It doesn't care what temperature it is. Obviously it does, but in the environment it's in, it doesn't have to be 0 degrees, but it doesn't care as long as it's within a certain range, and septic systems are definitely going to be within that range. It's not greasy. It's going to help clean those lines, remediate those septic lines, eat that biomat, and then it's working 10 times, 100 times. Don't know how many times faster, but it's working incredibly fast, so much so that you can see clean, clear water like you saw in the video at the commercial site. Thanks, guys. I really hope you give SludgeHammer an opportunity. I really hope you give us an opportunity to come out, meet you, explain the system to you, and get the upgrade to your septic system that it's been needing. Thanks, guys. Meaning both with oxygen and without oxygen, it can actually switch between the two. Aerobic meaning with air, anaerobic meaning without air. A conventional septic system is without air. No air is being introduced into the septic system. Literally, the bacteria like to hang out down here on the bottom and break down that sludge layer because this floating layer is too close to oxygen. And this bacteria that's in a conventional septic system is actually poisonous to that bacteria to get oxygen. So what do we need to do? This SludgeHammer unit will pump the tank, so all the sludge is going to go away. That nasty scum layer on top is going to go away. We're going to drop this SludgeHammer unit right here on the inlet side, put the air pump up by your house, trench over into the yard, very small trench, and install the SludgeHammer right here. And that air line is going to come down and tie into it. So now all of this is getting mixed up, a lot like a treatment plant does. But instead of having different chambers and baffles, we're going to add special screening and filter material over this outlet pipe to prevent the fine filter material from going out. So now we have a with air system here working. It's remediating.
It's literally taking all of that sludge, it's eating, it's treating it. You saw the video of it happening at that commercial system. Very similar look is going to go on here. Obviously a lot less flow and a lot less solid, so even cleaner, clearer water than that, which I don't know if you can get because it was so clear from that video. But then this water that goes out, here is where it's so special on a conventional septic system with a sledgehammer, because this gravel bed is still without air. So the bacteria should die. But the 5 strands of facultative bacteria actually are going to adjust. They're actually going to use this biomat as their food. So the very thing you're wanting to get rid of in your failed septic system is this bacteria's food. That's a really good thing. Over time, this unit working is going to eat this biomat away. It's literally going to make it disappear because it's food. And all of this gravel gets restored, and now this water coming out of the pipe can actually access the soil again. How can you tell if you have a failing septic system? Obviously, a failing fill line. Obviously, if you have that backups and stuff like that, where you got to get your tank pumped out a whole bunch because the tank just keeps filling up faster than every 3 to 5 years like it should. Or here's another sign: green grass on top of a septic system in the middle of the summertime. I know everyone says grass is greener on top of a septic tank. That's totally true when the septic system is failing, because that water should be going down. Gravity is pulling water down, not up. These beds can be buried even 3 feet deep, sometimes a foot, sometimes 2 feet, but still that water should never go up. If water's going up, it means that this isn't absorbing the way it should be, and that's the only way you can get rid of it is via evaporation by the roots. The grass is sucking up the water, and it's making it happy. The sun's evaporating, and it's trying to get water through a different means than it was actually designed for. So if you have green grass in a long snaked out line over your fill bed in your backyard during the summertime, it's a good indication that this problem, this biomat, is starting to happen. And you really need to give us a shout, because we can talk about getting a remediator in there before it's too late. Now, obviously a remediator can't come in if this pipe is crushed in half, full of roots or other things. It can't fix those issues, but we can fix those issues and then get a remediator in it, and we can save your septic system. So we've seen the unit, we've seen the sledgehammer, we've seen how it looks, we've seen the inside of the system, we've talked a little bit about the bacteria, how it's different than other bacteria, and why this sledgehammer is so powerful. What we want to talk about now is its actual application and how it applies to you and your septic system. So if you have a conventional septic system, and by conventional I mean standard house, no air pumps, no bells and whistles, just a concrete 1,000-gallon septic tank is the normal size, in an absorption bed. Now I know this is a little bit of a weird picture, but I'm going to try to walk you through it and explain it. So basically water comes in from the house and drops the waste, the paper, everything that's been flushed. What's heavier than water sinks. That's going to be this layer on the bottom called the sludge layer. What's lighter than water floats. The pipe that's taking the water out is going to grab this water from the center. That's about 75% pure. That 75% pure water then goes out and has to get absorbed into the ground via a set of absorption beds, which is basically just a pipe with holes in it surrounded with gravel. So I kind of did a little bit of an exposed view here for you. And so this pipe is the pipe right here coming out of the septic system, and it's got all these little perforated holes in this pipe surrounded with gravel or other material. There's tons of different types of absorption bed, but this is the most common in our area. So how this would get installed is someone would come in. I kind of got the ditch here for you. They would dig this trench, they'd lay down gravel, they'd lay down pipe, they'd lay down more gravel, and they'd cover it back up with the original soil. And so this original soil is what is surrounding all of this. Over time, the 25% that's remaining that hasn't actually gotten separated out by a conventional septic tank creates what's called a biomat. A biomat is basically a film, kind of like that gut bacteria that we talked about that's kind of slimy. It's a mixture of stuff that wasn't able to break down as well as the dead bacteria. Because once it leaves this environment, this is an anaerobic environment as well, it doesn't have either the correct amount of food, the right temperature, and it dies, creating this biomat. And what that does is it basically makes a horrible thick layer, a mat. That's what it's called, a biomass. It's a black, thick, oily membrane that's surrounding all of this gravel in the gravel. If you ever saw a septic system dug up, it's just nothing but black gravel and stuff. That's that biomat that's built up. So obviously the water can get down here into the gravel, but it can't actually penetrate to the soil because this biomat is protecting. This oily film is keeping that water from penetrating. So that's what Sledgehammer power is in a conventional septic system because it uses facultative bacteria.